She stopped texting. The warmth faded. Most men would panic, spiral, beg, but he didn't flinch, and that changed everything. The silence that changed everything. He noticed it first in the way she texted. Short, dry replies that used to overflow with warmth. Then came the long pauses between calls, the missed goodnight messages, the subtle shift in her tone. It wasn't dramatic, no slammed doors or loud fights, just withdrawal. Like watching a sunset, you can't say when the light fades, you just know it's gone. Marcus wasn't new to relationships. He was 38, divorced once, self-employed, and had been through enough to know when a woman was pulling away. But this time, something was different. Not in her, but in him. He didn't chase. He didn't beg. He didn't flinch. Most men in his position would spiral. They'd analyze every text, replay every conversation, ask their friends for advice that deep down they already knew. Some would double down with romantic gestures, trying to win her back. Others would numb the ache with distraction, alcohol, rebound dates, late-night scrolling. But Marcus didn't run toward her. Instead, he returned to himself. He took long walks with no phone, only the wind and his breath to keep him company. He journaled, not about her, but about himself, what he was feeling, what he feared, what he still needed to confront inside. He reread Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, a habit he'd picked up during the darkest season of his life 5 years prior. The Stoics taught him something the world never had. You are not owed anything, not affection, not attention, not permanence, but you are always responsible for how you respond. And in this space, where most men panic, Marcus became powerful. When someone pulls away, most people collapse inward, like a building losing its foundation. But what if, instead of clinging, you stood still? What if you used the silence not as rejection, but as revelation? Marcus remembered something his old mentor told him once. The universe is always telling you something. Sometimes it whispers through absence. He realized this wasn't about her at all. It was about what she had triggered in him, that old familiar wound, the fear of abandonment, the craving to be validated, the need to prove he was enough. But Marcus no longer sought healing through someone else's approval. He knew now a man cannot be truly free if his peace depends on how another person feels about him. So he breathed, he lifted weights, he made dinner for one with intention, chopping vegetables like meditation, each act of preparation a quiet rebellion against emotional chaos. He didn't view her distance as a threat. He saw it as a mirror that showed him where he still needed to grow. And something beautiful happened. Without chasing her, without saying a word, he felt more in control than ever, not of her, but of himself. That, to Marcus, was real power, to remain centered when the world tries to tilt you. Picture this, a rock in the middle of a river. Water crashes, storms rise, yet it holds its ground. Not because it fights the current, but because it knows its place. That's what a Stoic man becomes. Not cold, not unfeeling, but unshakable. Marcus didn't ghost her. He didn't become passive-aggressive. He simply stopped initiating, not to punish, but to reflect. And for once, silence didn't scare him. He let her absence teach him what presence really means. By the end of the week, she texted again, "Hey, are you okay?" But Marcus was already past the need for that question. He was more than okay. He was sovereign, not because she came back, but because, whether she did or not, he had already returned to himself. The space between, the days that followed were quiet. Not just from her, but from the noise within. Marcus had grown used to internal chatter, the voice that begged for answers, the insecurity that whispered he wasn't enough, the hunger to fix something that maybe didn't even want fixing. But now, in her absence, something unexpected arrived. Stillness. He didn't check her Instagram story, didn't scan who liked her latest post. He wasn't trying to win the breakup or keep emotional score. He was done playing a game he didn't sign up for. Instead, he asked himself a different question. Why do we fear the withdrawal of love more than the withdrawal of self? He realized most men don't fear losing her. They fear losing the version of themselves they become when someone loves them, a version they can't seem to hold on their own. But Marcus had outgrown that dependency. He started rising earlier, meditating before sunrise with a candle and the scent of cedar. He read Seneca's words on impermanence. No man was ever wise by chance. He thought of how long he'd lived reactively, responding to emotions like a leaf in the wind. Now he was the wind. It's strange how silence, once terrifying, can become sacred. When was the last time you sat with discomfort and let it speak to you? Most people run from it, but you, reading this, what might happen if you stayed? Marcus remembered when he was younger, how he thought love was about proving himself. Show her you're attentive. Show her you're kind. Be more, be more, be more. But the Stoics taught him something brutal and beautiful. You are not responsible for how someone receives your value. You are only responsible for embodying it. So, he didn't flinch when her message came again. Hey, I've been thinking about us. He didn't rush to reply, not out of spite, but clarity. Because when you're no longer afraid to lose someone, you communicate differently. You listen better. You don't filter your truth through the fear of abandonment. You speak from a place of groundedness. That night he sat on his porch under the stars, sipping tea, the wind cool on his face. He wasn't waiting for her reply. He was meeting himself again. And for the first time in years, he felt whole. You've probably been where Marcus is, left on red, ghosted, or in a relationship where attention fades like a radio signal in a tunnel. But here's the truth. What's fading isn't your worth. It's the illusion that someone else defines it. When she returned, it started with a text, then another, the kind of messages that aren't really asking questions, but searching for energy. How have you been? That meant, do you still care? Miss our talks. That meant, are you still available to validate me? Marcus saw them for what they were, not evil, not manipulative, just unclear, the same kind of unclear he once was, but he had changed. The man she left behind had needed closure. He would have jumped at the chance to meet, to talk things through, to rewrite the ending with softer hands. But the man she was texting now was no longer performing for love. He was no longer hoping that her return would restore something in him, because he had already restored it himself. He replied calmly, no bitterness, no delay, just real words from a real man. I'm in a good place. I've been focusing on the work, the gym, the stillness. I hope you're well. And then he put the phone down. No waiting, no overanalyzing the 3 gray dots. He wasn't ignoring her to appear strong. He was being strong by no longer needing the game. Ever notice how people come back when you stop trying to make them stay? Not because of magic, but because detachment is powerful, because emotional sovereignty is magnetic, and because the world feels the weight of a man who doesn't chase, but chooses. She asked to meet, just to talk, she said. They met at a small cafe they used to love. She wore the same perfume, same way she tucked her hair behind her ear when nervous. But something felt different, not in her, in him. She talked. He listened. But this time he didn't lean in, didn't fill the silence, didn't reach across the table with words designed to rescue or impress. He didn't owe her performance, only presence. She apologized. She admitted she got scared, that he was too calm sometimes, that she wasn't sure how to respond to someone who didn't beg, didn't argue, didn't chase. And there it was, the moment of realization. The very thing she once interpreted as distance was actually depth. Marcus smiled gently. I get it, he said. Most people are so used to chaos, they mistake peace for indifference. What if your calm presence is not a weakness, but a signal of your power? In a world that feeds on emotional reactivity, your steadiness is rebellion, and rebellion is attractive. She asked if he wanted to try again, and for the first time in his life, he didn't feel pressure to say yes or no based on emotion. He paused, not to calculate, but to feel the truth within himself. Then he said, "I want peace more than I want history." And that was it. He paid the bill, walked her to her car, hugged her with kindness, not clinging, then walked away, not because he didn't care, but because he finally did. He cared enough not to betray himself. Peace over performance. That day, as Marcus walked away from the cafe, he didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel smug. He didn't feel like a man who won. What he felt was stillness. The kind that doesn't demand applause, the kind that doesn't need to be posted, proven, or paraded around like a new badge of masculinity. It was the quiet confidence of a man who had finally chosen himself, not in arrogance, but in awareness. He took the long way home, through the park where they used to walk their dog, past the bookstore where they first held hands, memory lanes now unchained, but instead of aching, he observed. Instead of spiraling, he stood, because he finally understood something the Stoics had taught all along. You only lose what you cling to. It wasn't her that had been hard to let go. It was the idea of who he thought he had to be for her, the over-explainer, the emotional safety net, the always available comfort. That version of him was gone, and in its place stood a man who no longer performed for love. He embodied it in how he treated himself. Have you ever noticed how deeply exhausting it is to be who others want you to be? To adjust your tone, your truth, your tempo, just to keep someone close. But what if losing them is the beginning of finding yourself? That night, Marcus journaled, not about her, about himself. He wrote about how it felt to remain calm in the face of confusion, how it felt to choose clarity over craving, how for the first time in a long time, he wasn't living from reaction, but from alignment. He wasn't trying to erase the past. He was extracting the lesson. And in that moment, he realized something deeply stoic. You cannot control who stays or goes, but you can control how you show up, with or without them. He began to see that emotional detachment didn't mean being cold or careless. It meant not being owned by the emotional weather of others. It meant showing love without losing self. It meant giving space, not silence. Boundaries, not barricades. Grace, not groveling. It meant being okay with being misunderstood, because your peace matters more than your image. Is it possible that the most attractive man isn't the loudest, the richest, or the most charming, but the one who remains rooted while the world sways? Marcus didn't block her. He didn't post cryptic quotes or chase dopamine hits to numb the silence. He simply went on with his life. Back to the gym, back to his business, back to mornings that started with breathwork and evenings that ended with reflection, no longer needing the chaos of emotional highs and lows to feel alive, because he had found something better, something deeper, something unshakable. The man who chose stillness. Weeks passed. She never reached out again. No final message, no late-night text, just silence. But Marcus didn't see it as abandonment anymore. He saw it as space, and that space became sacred. It became a garden for his growth, a furnace for his focus, a temple for his truth. The man who once obsessed over what does she feel had learned to ask a deeper question. What kind of man am I becoming in her absence? He didn't flinch when she pulled away. Not because he didn't care, but because he finally knew that no woman, no relationship, no story should ever dictate the worth of his presence. This is what Stoicism had trained him for all along: to choose response over reaction, to place virtue above validation, to recognize that real power isn't in getting her back, it's in never losing yourself again. Maybe it's your story too. Maybe someone you gave your heart to stepped back. Maybe they're drifting right now, and maybe your first instinct is to reach, to explain, to hold on. But what if this was your moment to rise? In a world that teaches men to chase, to perform, to prove, the Stoic man remains. He doesn't chase closure. He creates completion within. He doesn't scream for attention. He lives with intention. He doesn't need control over others. He masters command over himself. So if she pulls away, let her. You do not flinch. You breathe, you observe, you reflect, and then you rebuild. Not out of revenge, out of reverence for the man you're meant to become. Let me leave you with this. You will be tested by love, by loss, by loneliness. But the man who builds his life on virtue, who anchors himself in values deeper than emotion, he becomes unshakable. So choose silence over begging. Choose stillness over chaos. Choose self-respect over self-sabotage. Because when you do, something powerful happens. The world starts to feel your presence, even in your absence. And that's the kind of man no one forgets. Now, a challenge for you. Tonight, before bed, ask yourself, am I chasing someone or abandoning myself? If the answer shakes you, good. That's the beginning of truth. And truth is the foundation of all freedom. So write it down, sit with it, begin again, because she may have pulled away, but you just stepped into your power. If this story stirred something in you, share it. Someone out there is chasing, flinching, losing himself. You could be the reason he stops. And if you want more stories like this, grounded in Stoic strength, forged in real struggle, subscribe, hit the bell, or just come back. We're building a brotherhood of men who don't chase noise. We choose stillness. Welcome.